a little bit about our next guest, Jeff. Rich, I'm super excited for Jeff. My audience, guys, if you've hung in here till now and you've been on this show the entire time, you've got a tremendous amount of value. The next guest that we're going to bring up, look, th- these are people that I'm still learning from. Okay, every single one of these guests are people that I'm still learning from. This next one, if you're wondering about creative deals, why don't you tell them a little bit about Jeff and his background here, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff Coffman is. I've known Jeff for a long time now, and he has been just a rock star since he started. I mean, he may disagree with that himself. He's a humble guy, but I think he's been a rock star, or at least had that rock star mentality. Not that I don't mean like diva, but I mean he knew he was going to rock it, or at least he's acted like it. If he didn't believe it, he's acted like it. But Jeff has been around. He actually. He finds creative ways to invest in real estate, basically virtually with zero money out of your own pocket. And he's been doing that since 2015. He currently holds, and the number might be higher now. We might have to ask him. But last I knew, it was 43 cash flowing properties between seller financing, disposition models, and straight rentals. This guy is absolutely killing it. He knows just about every single creative deal structuring tactic out there. And this is one of the speakers that I've been stoked about all of our speakers, but just that Jeff gives back. He's spoken at my River City REI roundtable a couple times as well, and he was one of the first ones we approached to see if he would speak here at Gateway to Freedom, and he was on board from day one. So we're so super excited and honored, and just very humbled and grateful that Jeff is with us today and November 4th and 5th in St. Louis. How's it going, Jeff?
Doing well, guys. Good morning. That's a lot of pressure, Rich.
No. It's just you doing you.
Hey, I try. What are you going to do?
Jeff, I've known Rich for a long time, and I popped on his live the other day with you talking about subject to and all of the expertise that you have. And you know what came out in my mind? I have a mentor of mine, John Maxwell. I talk about him all the time just because I've read a lot of his books and stuff. And he has got this famous quote. He says, "You plan you or someone else might." I figured that might resonate with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very much kind of an independent guy. I'm really am an introvert at heart. But yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I don't know who that particular individual is that you're talking about, but what a great way to kind of summarize, I guess, how I kind of picture myself. You plan you. That's awesome. I love it.
For sure. Would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about what you do and what you're going to be talking about at the Gateway to Freedom event coming up?
Absolutely. So let me just give you a brief history. And you might have heard this the other day when I was talking to Rich, but when I got into this whole thing, I got into this in 2015. I got into this business 2015, and I had this job. I'll give you the nitty gritty. I had this job. I was driving tons of hours to get back and forth, and I was working 8, 10, 12 hours a day over there. And I said, man, I got to get out of this thing. This is just absolutely killing me. And at the time I had excellent credit, but I had no savings. I had no money to go out and buy real estate. And so ultimately what I ultimately ended up coming up with, and I did hire a mentor for this. So the mentorship was definitely worth the money. What we came up with was picking up properties subject to, and so that's kind of been my thing ever since then. I've been either directly involved, direct purchase, or involved in third party transactions to well over 300 now at this point across the country, subject to deals. But that's not all that I'm going to talk about at the event. So I think by now most people in this business at least know what subject to is. And we will talk briefly about that a little bit at the event. But I really want to dig into what's really important. And Christina touched on this earlier. I've been on since early this morning. She touched on deal analysis. And so a lot of people really want to know, when is a good time to consider subject to. And I'll just give you a little spoiler alert. anytime is a good time to consider subject two. So we'll touch briefly on subject two. We're going to do a deep dive into the numbers. But the main focus that I really want to touch on at the event is, everyone's heard this saying. I believe that everyone's heard the saying that you make money when you buy, right? Everyone's heard that.
Yeah.
I am going to put a little twist on that, because I'm going to show people a way, or a couple of ways actually, to create their own little economy inside their deals. And I'm going to show you how to make a lot more money when you sell. That's what I want to focus on.
Wow, guys, that's a whole reason to be at the event, just to check out and find out how to make even more money when you sell. That brings me to my next question, actually, Jeff. And I have structured some questions here to really help people understand some of the value that you're going to be bringing to this event. When you go into anything in life, you've got to consider the big picture, right? You got to consider not just the steps along the way, but what's the end result that I want. Think back to that time when you first got started. What was the big picture that you hired the mentor for, that you were working towards? What was that big picture vision?
I talk about this quite a bit, and the honest truth is that I didn't have a large vision. I just knew that at that time I was trying to solve an immediate problem, and that was this job that I had. I
Oppression, yeah.
I wanted to be out of this job. And so, admittedly, as things, and this is kind of what I tell people, as things progressed and I started getting these small little wins, that big vision in the back, that picture became much more clear to me. So I started with an immediate problem, and then as I started to progress and discover and learn and figure some of these things out, things have just become much more clear to me. And I can wake up in the morning now, every morning, and I know exactly what I'm striving for. I know where I'm headed. And so for those of you out there, I guess that don't, when you're posed, you get that question from someone, you don't necessarily have it all figured out in the beginning. You just don't. And so, like I said, it's just these little wins that you get, and that it helps that light at the end of the tunnel come much closer.
Yeah, Rich had mentioned that you have a good sense of self-worth and a good sense of confidence in what you're doing. When was the point that you made, think back to that point. When was that point that you made the decision and you said, this is freedom. This is what freedom is. This is what it feels like. When was that point for you?
It was that point came for me when I realized that, and I'm going to kind of throw in, I guess, one of your questions. I'll combine this with that question. You asked, what is freedom? And so for me, it became that the point at which I realized that I actually had that. It doesn't mean that I don't work. It doesn't mean that I don't work every day. It doesn't mean that we don't experience difficulties and wins and losses. But what it does mean is independence. It's independence from things that it's the choice, if you will. It's the independence from the things that you don't necessarily want to do. You have to do them, but you have the choice on whether or not you follow through with any given task or job or deal or anything along those lines. It's the word freedom to me means independence. That's what it means.
For sure. Rich, you've known Jeff for a long time. Can you please share with everybody some of the benefits and what a blessing it is to have Jeff come to this Gateway to Freedom event coming up?
I mean, you are going to get to hear a guy who knows the creative game in and out, and you're going to get, like he said, he's not just going to, give you a little sprinkling of here's the idea and concept of a certain type of creative financing strategy known as sub 2. He's actually going to, like he said, he's going to deep dive. He's going to actually give you some real nuts and bolts. And here's how you analyze one of these deals. And I think for anybody who's even thought, man, I mean, subject 2 is a sexy thing right now. Anybody that thought they wanted to get into it, this is the deal, because you want to get there and hear exactly how you analyze those deals. And I mean, man, I mean, you don't have to travel somewhere else to do it. You can come stay right here in St. Louis, or if you're in the Midwest, it's so local. And if you want to come from somewhere else, this is the guy you want to talk to, because he knows what's going on.
Yeah, fantastic. So I have one more question, and we'll get to questions that come from the audience here. But the last question that I have for you is that, Jeff, life doesn't come with an instruction manual, and neither does real estate, right? So I guess the question would be best phrased like this. How did you determine who you wanted to be so that you could do what you wanted to do to have the things that you are currently experiencing now? Who did you want to be? How did you determine that person?
Well, I guess I was waiting for you've had a really, really tough question I liken this to like those questions when you're sitting in a job interview, and it's like they ask you these super ambiguous questions, and you can go either way. But I think for me it was just a matter of introspection and trying to figure out, because I had no plan, I had no grand plan, and so it's literally just sitting down and trying to figure out. There's a great book, Patrick Bet-David, by the way, Your Next 5 Moves. If nobody's read that, you got to read that book. Awesome book. Since we're doing our book recommendations today, I got a couple others if you'd like. But it's just sitting down, figuring out, and trying to discover who you are. Discover self. And I don't know. There was no single point that I could point to where I'd say, hey, I got this. I've never truly, I'm one of those I'm a lifelong learner, and it's just not one of those things that, there was a particular point where I say, okay, I'm done. I've got this, I can move on to the next thing. And so, I would say my answer to that would be, it's not a one and done. I'm continually trying to move forward, and I don't necessarily have all the answers of where my life is headed. It's just I know that I'm moving forward. I will tell you a big part of that, and the reason I love what Rich and Josh are putting together here is strategic partnerships. I really love that aspect of this business, and I was kind of early on. It was I had this little bit of I didn't really want to deal with partners. I just had this thing where I was just like, you know what, I can do this myself. I guess it's probably my introvert side coming out. But now I've got some really, really great partners. And I think that this Gateway to Freedom conference is probably, in my mind, that is one of the goals here is to try and build that power team, like Josh was talking about. So, and again, I'm doing what Josh did. I'm rambling on a little bit, but one thought leads to the next and leads to the next. So,
well, that's why we do this, right? Is that we're showcasing who you are, right? Because it's one thing for people to give a presentation, and that we're going to do that. They're going to get the information concise, delivered in such a way that is going to blow their mind and shape their skills and all of that kind of stuff, Jeff. But the challenge is that you want to know, when you're, at least I do, when I'm sitting in an audience and I'm learning from a speaker, I want to know a little bit about who they are. I want to know about their life, because I teach this thing called value goals, and the goals that I have to align with my values, right? Mm-hmm. And so you want to make sure that the person that you resonate with is in alignment with your values. And you do subject to deals, and one of the questions that I get all these questions too from my text, right? Like these people who are in my audience are texting me, and so it's not just in the comments that we're getting these questions, but one of the questions said is, and I'm just going to ask it. I'm sure you're going to talk about it at the event, and I'm sure you got an entire presentation around it. But how do you get a seller to agree to a subject to deal?
That is a really great question, and there is a very easy answer to that. And it is all about value. If one of the things that we like to do is, I'll give you a little insight into just a blip of what we teach in our coaching program. And that is, if you can wrap your mind around this idea, if we're talking about subject to anyway, so we know with subject to, without getting too deep into it, if we know that there is a mortgage on a property, we know that deal has already been funded. It's not been funded by you. It's been funded by your seller. They went out, they got a loan, and you're picking this thing up subject to. So what that does for me immediately is that tells me I get to shift focus. I get to shift focus on what is really important when I'm standing there talking to a seller, and that is, how do I get this person to trust me, believe that I know what I'm doing, and build trust and rapport with the seller. That is the kind of the high level answer to that. It's not convincing them. You never want to convince someone to do a subject to deal with you. It's terribly dangerous. You want them on your team. You want them on board with you. And so that's what you have to focus on. If you can wrap your mind around the idea that the deal's already been financed, now you can attack I say attack, that's not the right word, but now you can start focusing on building the trust and rapport, which you should be doing anyway, right? That should be your number one goal when you're dealing with a seller. So that is kind of my high level answer to that question. Happy to dig more into that at the conference.
For sure. Thank you very much, Jeff. I cannot tell you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure the guys here, Rich can speak for himself, but I have to say thank you for being a part of this show today, and also Gateway to Freedom that's coming up. It's incredible that you've taken your time and that you're involved with all of the stuff that they're doing in Gateway to Freedom. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, Rich, we've got another great speaker that's about to come up here.